this evening's presentation on how and why to run for elective office in Brookline. And I will actually turn this meeting over to our moderator for this evening. I wanted to show you you can find this on, you probably can't see this online, maybe you can, but there's an organizational chart on the website, and on the top line is the voters, of course, in Brookline, and then under it are the elective offices in Brookline, which are town clerk, moderator, town meeting, board of selectmen, school committee, library trustee, and housing authority. And this evening you'll have a chance to hear from people who have held those offices and inspire you to run for office. So I'd like to turn this over to Barbara Scotto, our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to see such a good turnout for the annual League of Women Voters panel on how to run for office. Sheila mentioned that this is an annual event, and there is a booklet that is connected with it where you can get information, and you can find that on the League's website. But I'm certain that you're going to find all the presentations both enlightening and practical. In thinking about this panel, I was reminded of my own introduction into local government. I grew up in Baltimore, and the only time I even noticed there was a local government was when I took the streetcar across the city to my grandparents' house. The streetcar passed an impressive city hall building, where I knew someone called the mayor had his office. I didn't have any idea about the specifics of what he did, but I knew his name. His name was Tommy D'Alessandro, and I knew he was somewhat important because of that fancy building. I pictured him sitting at a large desk in the center of the building, directing his staff to do this and that. I don't think I ever laid eyes on him, and I certainly didn't know he had a daughter just slightly older than I am, named Nancy, who went on to become the Democratic Speaker of the House. What I did know about government was that people like my father, not my mother, my father always voted, read the Baltimore Sun, complained about the politicians, and occasionally joined in protests. But really, until I moved to Brookline, I thought of government as something other special people did somewhere else. Years later, I moved here, and one day I had my first child, and one day I was visiting an older cousin, and she asked me what I was doing besides being at home. I said, oh, shopping, going to the library, visiting my friends, taking Adam to the park. I replied, no, she said, what are you involved in the community? And I sheepishly had to say that I wasn't involved in anything. She told me in no uncertain terms that I needed to be, that my grandmother, my father, my mother had all been active in their church community, and that if I didn't do some sort of volunteering, I wouldn't be following in their footsteps, and I wouldn't be setting a good example for my children. She was a determined lady, my cousin, and that comment kept nagging at me. What are you doing in the community? It didn't need to nag at me for long, because my North Brookline neighborhood was feeling under siege because of the development of the old Dexter school site. The developer wanted to tear it down and build a huge 400-unit apartment, which in fact he did. My friend Edith Perlman and I entered the fray. We both had children the same age, so we would be pushing our babies along with many of our neighbors. And while our battle was not completely successful, as you can see as you stroll by Dexter Park, it did set in motion a movement toward downzoning in many areas of town. Then, following Edith's advice, I rang doorbells all over Precinct 2, and with a little luck and a lot of conversation with constituents, I joined her in town meeting. Some years later, I found myself on the Comprehensive Plan Review Commission with Sheila Hussey, who introduced us. I'm sorry, it was Janice who introduced us, Sheila that I talked to earlier. We managed to make the zoning a little more neighborhood friendly. By the way, as an example of community activism, this same neighborhood mobilized 25 years later to work long and hard with the town and the Archdiocese of Boston to get an attractive development on the St. Aidan's property, one that preserved the church and the tree, instead of losing everything to a 140-unit high-rise, which was the first thing they wanted to do. What never changed is the need to be vigilant in Brookline. And in fact, we usually are. My neighborhood, for example, is yet involved in change, and we are responding to something by working collaboratively with the town to become a local historic district. So I guess what I would say is once you start, it's hard to stop. I've been involved for 40 years, and what have I learned from this? First of all, I learned that my cousin was right. Your children do learn by your example. And for that, as well as for many other reasons, it is important to be involved in something where you are spending your time for the common good. It's part of the social contract that we help everyone have a decent life. And part of that help is ensuring that we have good and just government. I have little patience with people who value the right to complain loudly, but do not shoulder the responsibility to help make the changes that would quiet their complaints. I have also learned that government in Brookline, and in many other communities as well, doesn't have to be about other people in distant places making decisions about your life. You can join right in locally, and you can make things happen. Right here in this town, we have grassroots government at its best. This grassroots government is the very fabric of the democratic process, a process made up of actions taken by people like you and me. Sometimes you will get praised for your work, but as often as not, brickbats will fly in your direction. The work is full of inefficiencies, and it's often messy. Still, if you are willing to commit time, energy, and thoughtful action, you can make a difference, and that is very satisfying. And I encourage you all to join in and become part of the action. And now, I'm going to turn this over to a member of the school committee, Lisa Jackson, and she is going to tell you a bit about school committee.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I just want to, before I jump in, echo two things that Barbara said in my experience thus far. One is that my kids think I'm a celebrity, and that's really cool, because they see me as somebody they think has a lot of power, like over things like school days, and I keep, snow days. Like, no, I actually don't, but go ahead and believe it. And then the other thing that I'll comment on is that to the point about being sort of praised and or the bats flying your way, I have found that everyone in this town is grateful and says thank you. Even if you are in a heated debate about something, they appreciate your willingness to serve. And as somebody who has never been in government before, I appreciate that. It makes you feel like you are doing something that people value around you. So I ran for school committee last year. This is my first year, so last May 6th, I was finally turning in my forms to Pat Ward, who came after me for being negligent on that. There are lots of forms. No, am I getting there? I'm getting there, right?
You're not alone on this board.
Oh, that's one thing you have to remember. There are forms and text forms and government forms, don't forget. So I ran a year ago. I ran unopposed, which everybody said, oh, congratulations, you don't have to do anything, but I took it as an opportunity to actually dive in and experience it as if I had an opponent. Because it was the first time for me, I wanted to understand what it was like, I wanted to meet people, I wanted to get to know the town in a different way. I've lived in Brookline for about 10 years now, and I have 2 children at the Pierce School, but I've just been sort of living here. I've not been very involved with everything locally, and so as somebody new, I tried to treat it as I just moved to town and get to know the different neighborhoods as part of the campaign that I otherwise didn't know. I got to know Ben Franco, I got to know Tommy, I got to know a lot of people through the process, which was great. So school committee, for me, has been an experience not dissimilar from being on a board of a nonprofit, in the sense that our responsibility as a school committee is to, there are three things that I have stuck to and try to stick to in terms of what our role is. We're responsible for strategy, so at a high level, what is the strategy of the schools and what we're trying to accomplish? We're responsible fiduciarily, so we have a lot to pay attention to in terms of the budget and accounting and bean counting sometimes. We're also responsible for hiring, supporting, and evaluating the superintendent. And so those are the three things that I have used as sort of a set of guideposts for what the job is and how I should interact with the committee, as well as with the work with the department that is staffed by experts who know much more about this work than I do. So trying to sort of take that step back. So a couple of things that Carol had sort of asked us to make sure we talked about. One was sort of what aspects of the campaign were the most beneficial. And I will say phone calls, conversations, meetings, any opportunity to talk to folks is something that I would encourage anybody who's running to do, particularly in parts of town that don't know you and you don't know. And there were neighborhoods I'd never been to. I had no idea, North Brookline is new to me. So it was great to get a chance to do that. And I think since then I have maintained some of those relationships, and you find they come in handy as you actually start to do the work. In terms of what the interaction has been with constituents, sort of post-campaign, in addition to people saying thank you, they then started to ask, why not, why not, why not? Can you fix, can you fix, can you fix? And people will ask you in the post office, in the grocery store, and when you're parking your car. And, that's a great way to interact with people. It can be a little challenging for those of you who've never done this before to remember everybody's name, to pay attention carefully when you're rushing to drop off your child. But folks have also come to school committee meetings, which I find personally very helpful. And we've started office hours that allows people to come an hour before the meeting or an hour in the morning, which is another great way to interact with folks and hear what's happening. And in fact, I would say we pay a lot of attention to folks who email us and who show up to meetings and who communicate with us, because it's the only way. The town is small, but the town is big, and it's hard for us to really understand what's going on in anybody's neighborhood or school if we don't hear from them. In terms of the responsibilities of this role, I got into it because as an educator, I taught at Boston College for many years. I've worked in nonprofits. I thought, and I was convinced that I had something to offer in terms of my expertise and my knowledge and my experience on boards and things of that nature. And I would say so far that's been true, but I also had a lot to learn. And I spent probably the first, Barbara would know this, 6-ish months very quiet, listening, trying to learn, trying to understand how our system works. I grew up in California. We don't have town meeting in California. We have counties in California, and they're organized very differently than they are here. We have mayors. We don't have selectmen. So I spent some time just trying to understand how we work here in Brookline. And to Barbara's point, I actually think it's pretty unique in terms of the town-school partnership and how we function together. Added level of complexity, but also an added chance to really think system-wide for the town, not just about school committee, but about the town, which I've really valued. We meet at least twice a month lately. I think it's been going on 4 times a month as a school committee. And those meetings can be 3 to 4 hours long. They are televised. It depends on the content of the meeting. It depends on whether we're having an executive meeting session as a part of it. So that's that's one piece of the commitment. As a committee member, you're also responsible for participating on subcommittees, of which I sit on 2. And then also attend finance committee meetings, because that's where all the budget happens. So you end up at 3 meetings in between those school committee meetings. And we serve as liaisons. So I'm the liaison to the Special Education Parents Advisory Council. I'm the liaison to the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. So the load is not light for anyone who's thinking of running for school committee. But what I like about it is I actually get to have my hands in a lot of very interesting things. One of my favorite subcommittees is actually policy, because that's a place where you both have to think about problems from the system level, but then also think about how you're going to implement things at the school level. So So it is a lot of time, but I have enjoyed the variation and getting to work with different people on the school committee. I guess the last thing I would say, everybody lately has been asking as I come up on my 1 year, is so are you having fun? Was it everything you ever hoped and dreamed it would be? Yes and more, in the sense that I'm learning a ton. I do feel like I'm making a contribution. It is very messy, and you cannot be a shrinking violet or a shy person to participate in these lively, sometimes quite controversial conversations about what's right for this town. But in that regard, I think it's also energizing, frustrating, and worth it. So I would encourage anybody else out there to run, and I'm happy to answer questions.
I'm Sandy Gadsby, as she said. I'm the town moderator. I'm been asked by the good people at the League to describe something about my duties and responsibilities and what the job involves. I have to confess, distinctly not here to encourage you to run for moderator. There's only one moderator, and I'm running in May. But you know, competition is good for the soul, I guess. The main responsibilities of the town moderator, of course, are moderating town meeting. In Brookline, we have 5 or 6 sessions of town meeting a year, and each one lasts about 3 or 3.5 hours. That is by no means the end of my responsibilities. I'm called upon to appoint the entire advisory committee, the entire committee on town organization and structure, a few members of the town finance, the town, what do you call it? The audit committee, I'm sorry. And of course, moderators committees when I'm called upon to appoint those. And most of the members of the Committee on Campaigns. But the main focus, although the appointment process I take quite seriously, and it does consume a fair amount of time, but of course the main focus is presiding over town meeting, and that requires a very thorough knowledge of the somewhat complicated and often arcane rules that govern town meeting, and an effort, as I view it, to reconcile two almost irreconcilable forces, and those are the desire of everyone to be heard and for the full flowering of the democratic process, and yet to run a reasonably efficient meeting. It's not a science, it's something of an art. And since Brookline has a strong moderator tradition, it's something over which I have some control and influence. It's the satisfying parts of the position are when town meeting does what it's supposed to do and does it reasonably efficiently and with a reasonable opportunity for all points of view to be heard. There is a downside that I've discovered, and that is that not some benighted citizens in this town don't agree with all of my rulings and all of my positions and my actions as moderator. And in fact, I've been publicly accused of such things as emulating, for those of you of a certain age, Bull Connor, who was a quite notorious Birmingham, Alabama sheriff during the civil rights era in Alabama. So you have to be prepared to take your lumps, and I tend to take them with, I hope, a degree of equanimity. As far as running for the office is concerned, I don't know much about it anymore. The first time I ran was 21 years ago. And I ran against the then chairman of the Board of Selectmen, who was a very outspoken individual, and I had to run a campaign, signs and a campaign committee and literature and so forth. I won by a 2-to-1 margin because I guess I did what you're supposed to do when you run for townwide office, and Jeffrey didn't. Since then, I've been unopposed, so I've sort of lost the art of campaigning.
Don't tell them that.
I told you, I'm not encouraging competition. And it's a great job, and I've enjoyed my 21 years of being your town moderator, and I hope I've done a reasonable job for the community. And I have to leave, so if any of you have any quick questions, I'm happy to answer them. Yes, sir.
Where do you see the role of the advisory committee, and why should Joe Sixpack be concerned about the advisory committee? Also, what is the application process for the advisory committee?
Well, there's no formal, I'll answer your second question first, there's no formal application process. If you're interested in being appointed to the advisory committee, the best thing you can do is let the chair, Harry Bors, or me, know of your interest. And I appoint the committee they're 3-year staggered terms. So I appoint or reappoint, fill out the committee on every June of every year. I rarely make interim appointments, although I do when people run for selectmen, because there's a policy and a fact of bylaw against both being a member of the advisory committee and the board of selectmen, so I may have 1 or 2 vacancies created by the process of running for selectmen. As far as the purpose and function and importance of the committee, it is the body that advises town meeting on all issues, not just financial issues, but all issues that come before it. And its importance in the town meeting process is extremely is great or less great, depending upon the esteem in which it's held by town meeting members. And I think historically the advisory committee has been held in pretty high esteem, and its recommendations taken quite seriously. It certainly does a lot of groundwork to come up with its recommendations to town meeting and articulates them before the meeting quite well. One thing I forgot to mention is that having, I hope, answered your question, the job requires about 300 hours a year. I keep track of my time for various purposes, and so it's hardly, well, it's focused on the 20 or 25 hours of actual town meeting. It requires a lot more than that, and a lot of interaction with town meeting members, particularly since I organize the process ahead of time and have to and enjoy dealing with town meeting members and want to speak at town meetings. So it's quite well, it's focused obviously in the spring and fall. It does require quite a bit of time on a daily basis. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
We are going to now turn to Ben Franco, who is our newest selectman, and he'll tell you a little bit about what it's like.
So I feel like most of the sort of easy stuff has been covered. So why don't I start by telling you how I got to where I am, a little bit about myself, and then I'll go sort of through the checklist of questions that I think all the panelists were sent, and answer them, and then, of course, take questions. So I am the youngest and the newest member of the Board of Selectmen. I've been there for just under a year. I ran in one election in May of 2014. I grew up in Brookline, so I've got a long history in town. I've been here for 31 years, going on 32 years. And prior to my election to the Board of Selectmen, I was a town meeting member and a member of the advisory committee. So I owe my start in town government to the previous speaker, to Sandy, and hopefully to his wisdom in appointing me to that finance committee, the advisory committee. Went to the Brookline Public Schools and actually came from a fairly involved family. My father's a bit of a legend around town in political circles, so certainly grew up informed about Brookline municipal affairs and involved in the democratic process. So the Board of Selectmen it sometimes feels like everything is under your jurisdiction. And for those of you that took a look at the sort of organizational chart that was passed out earlier in the meeting, at the start of the meeting, the Board of Selectmen is really the group, the organ of town government that's responsible for the day-to-day operation and making sure that the classic municipal services that you think about are done in an efficient and an effective way. You'll, of course, hear from some other speakers who've got sort of carved out boards and commissions, and you heard from Lisa at the beginning, who's the school committee's in charge of running the schools. But really, the DPW, the police department, the fire department, the finance department, the treasurer collector, those sorts of things, all under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen. Aside from sort of that day-to-day operational responsibility, the Board of Selectmen is also the licensing authority in the town of Brookline, which means that we pass out about 600 licenses a year in 20 different categories. Things like the common victualer's license and the food vendor, so that's your sort of bars and restaurants, lodging houses, open-air parking lots, inflammable licenses, and special events, so things like the marathon and block parties. And we don't do this alone. The Board of Selectmen hires the town administrator, who is Mel Kleckner. He's sort of the boots on the ground guy that does day-to-day operational things. Interacts on a daily basis with the department heads and sort of other municipalities in the region and in the state, and really advises the Board of Selectmen on what the right course of action to take is. Of course, the final decision, the ultimate decision, rests with the 5 members of the Board of Selectmen, but certainly are supported by the town administrator, by Mr. Kleckner, in reaching those conclusions. Required meetings. This is a board that will take up your life if you let it. We meet every Tuesday night. Those meetings generally are 3 to 4 hours in length. And we all sit on other boards and commissions as a liaison from the Board of Selectmen. So I sit on the newly formed Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations Commission, formerly known as the Human Resources Youth Relations Commission. I am the Selectmen's representative to the Commission on the Disabled, and I will be chairing a noise bylaw review committee. That's going to be a Selectmen's committee to look at sort of noise bylaw, nuisance ordinances. This was an issue that came up in the previous 2 town meetings. Additional meetings that we have to go to. You're not required to go to community meetings, but certainly encouraged, and it makes you a more effective elected official, a more effective selectman if you do so. So a great example of a meeting that I wasn't required to go to, but definitely did go to, and would advise anybody running to attend similar meetings, is the Martin Luther King Day celebration. This was a community celebration, took place at the Coolidge Corner Theater. It's really become noteworthy for a number of different reasons. But these types of community gatherings really sort of give you a sense of the dialogue amongst residents of the town, and help you take the pulse of what people are thinking and issues that you should be thinking about. All told, being on the board, really, it takes about 15 hours a week between attending the board meetings on Tuesday nights, other boards and commissions that you may be the selectman's representative on, or that you may have an interest in, community events, and the required reading to sort of get up to speed on what's going to come before you on Tuesday night, things like contracts, sort of setting policy. Most recently, the override discussion has taken up a lot of time. 15 hours a week all told. And you're always really on. The blessing and the curse of being on the board is that you are really the face of the town. And people will stop you in the parking lots, when you're buying groceries, when you're getting on the T, when you're at the post office, similar to what Lisa said. Everybody's got a view on things and is not shy about expressing it. And that's really the great thing about living in this community is people are informed and they're passionate and they're engaged. And if you choose to run for the Board of Selectmen or school committee or any of the other offices that you'll hear discussed tonight, you should expect that people are going to contact you and make their views and their opinions known to you on the issues of the day. You know, my advice on running for selectman or any other office for that matter is to be accessible. And the thing that I found most effective in my campaign was to go door to door and knock on people's doors and introduce yourself and tell them why you're running, what you hope to accomplish, and answer their questions. These sorts of face-to-face, one-on-one interactions are invaluable, both in helping you get your name out there and being successful in your endeavor of getting elected, but also it pays dividends down the road when you're actually serving, should you win election. And it helps you, again, find out what people are thinking and what's on their mind and what they're looking for town government to do.
First of all, let me tell you a little something about the office of the town clerk. I sort of look at it as a triptych. You know, it's sort of like there's a public records component, which we we do all kinds of dog licensing, business certificates. We record all births, deaths, and marriages, and issue certified copies of the same. We record physician certificates. We issue various permits and a myriad of other responsibilities. Actually, there was actually one time I actually sat down and counted them. There was at one time 158 legislative references to responsibilities in the town clerk's office. It seems like when the legislature can't figure out, where it should go, they give it to the town clerk to do. And every year I always find something that I didn't know about. Like, give you for instance, if you have a competing condominium associations over a particular issue on land or bordering there, I'm required to call a meeting so they can get together and figure it out. It's, I don't know why, I think other than just to prove that legally that an attempt was made before they start suing each other. I don't know, I have no idea. But that came up just last year, and I've had 2 of them since then. So it's an interesting responsibility. So that's the public record side. The other side is voter registration we look at, which is essentially issuing the street listing every year, registering voters, and maintaining all voter records. And that doesn't sound like an awful lot, but trust me, it's an awful lot, particularly now in a computerized system that follows many federal laws. And we're restricted by certain things that we can do, and there are certain things that we have to do, and it's a lot of work, and thank you for computerization, but even with computerization, it still occupies an awful lot of time, an awful lot of people power. And then finally, I think what people normally see is the election component of it, which is essentially we administer and record and essentially report all the results of all the elections that we hold, both at a local level and at a state level, including state elections, state primaries and presidential primaries. That's basically what the office does. In terms of running for office, I suppose I have a lot of experience at it. One, because I've done it, and two, it's because it's central to my office in a lot of ways. The first thing I would probably say is that there are a number of resources that we do have available for candidates out there. The first being the website. And this is no small task. I think that if you look at the website and you research the results of past town elections, let's say if you're looking for town meeting or even for town-wide office, you see how many votes you'll need. You know, what votes will, based upon the number of candidates and what office it might be. You can actually try to figure out, well, I'll need at least a minimum of these X number of votes in order to win that office. So the results are a good thing to take a look at to see, where the trends are, how certain parts of the town vote, depending on the candidates and the issues. So that's one resource, and that's available on the website. Another thing that's available on the website is our applications for absentee voting. You may have, if you're a steadfast candidate, you're out there, you're identifying your voters, and you know that some people are probably ill or they may be going away on vacation around election time. You may want to encourage them to fill out an application, and that you can download from the website and have them fill it out, either for a family member or for themselves. Now, a family member, essentially it's a parent, can fill one out for their children, or the individual one, which is the person filling out an application for themselves. That can be downloaded from the website, and you can use that as a resource tool to give to a voter who's leaning towards you. You can say, well, if you're not going to be around here, why don't you file an absentee ballot application? That's basically pretty much what's available on the website to some degree. But the key resource I think that we have as an office is that, again, due to computerization, is frequent voters. I mean, you don't want to waste not that I'm going to give you how to run for office, but I mean, you generally don't want to waste your time asking people who don't vote on town elections. And it's significant. I mean, we had probably a 79% turnout for the state election. And then the average town election is somewhere between 7 and 11%. So it's a considerable drop off. I suspect it'll be higher because there's there'll be override questions on this ballot. So it's a pocketbook issue for a lot of people that may want to have them come out and vote. But even still, I think the last time a 2.5 question was on the ballot, I don't think we received more than 26%. So it's still a major drop-off from the state elections that we see. So, you don't want to waste your time identifying voters for a state election that won't come out for a town election. So ideally, if you want to, and it's easy as heck, I mean, all you have to do is just basically request it. We can give you frequent voters for annual town election for the past 4 years. Just give us your email and we'll email it to you. There's a candidate sitting right here this evening that we did that. It was the easiest thing in the world. I mean, we have the ability to do that, and we do it frequently. So if you're interested in frequent voters, whether it's a town meeting race or a town-wide race, we can give you the last 4 town elections, and we can also give the state elections too, because arguably you could say, well, those who participated in November, some of them will probably come out because of the 2.5 override questions that will be on the ballot. So in any event, that's available to you as well. Additionally, although we get less demand for it nowadays because of the computerization of all this data, but some people do request hard copies of voting lists for certain streets, or to identify certain buildings in order to register people, to determine, okay, these people are registered, but I know this person isn't, and they come along with a voter registration affidavit, have them fill it out and sign it in, and then they bring it in. And as long as they get it in before 20 days before the election, they're registered to vote and will appear on the ballot, and then ultimately, presumably, they'll vote for you if you've done all the legwork for that. So there's a couple of resources in our office, and I'll be more than glad to answer any questions later about that. Essentially, the most important thing right now is the schedule for anybody who's interested in running. Papers are available now. The filing deadline, for all intents and purposes, is March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, at 5 p.m. in this office right next door. Now, technically, there were 2 filing deadlines, but you really shouldn't worry about that. The 2 filing deadlines statutorily are based upon cities, where you would give your nomination papers to the Board of Registrars in the city for them to certify it, and then you would pick that up there and file it with the city clerk. But since we're one and the same, we're both the registrars and the clerk, once you file on March 17th, unless you withdraw, you'll be on the ballot. Okay, because we basically go from one timestamp to another timestamp, you know. The filing deadline for you to file with us for certification purposes is March 17th. The filing deadline to file with the town clerk's office is March 31st. March 31st. But you'll never touch those papers again. We'll just basically go before March 31st. We'll take that paper that you submitted for certification and we'll timestamp it in from the Board of Registrars, and then we'll timestamp it into the town clerk's thing. So we'll have 2 timestamps on it, and you'll appear on the ballot, unless you withdraw or unless somebody objects to your candidacy. And that deadline basically is 48 hours after that second filing deadline. So it would be April 2nd. So if you didn't want to run, if you filed your papers and you decided you didn't want to run, all you need to get is a notarized letter from you saying that you wish not to run, and that would have to be filed by 5 p.m. April 2nd. You know, and on the other hand, let's say you have a candidate and you believe that candidate isn't really a resident of the town of Brookline any longer. That's happened. You know, people can file an objection. What would happen then is that objection would be held over and would have an emergency hearing of the Board of Registrars to make a determination whether that person is in fact living in Brookline and you should be on the ballot or not. So those determinations can be made relatively quickly. So that's basically the schedule. So the most important deadline you're looking for, whether you're running for town-wide or for precinct-wide for town meeting, is March 17th. Now, town-wide candidates need 50 certified signatures in order to be on the ballot. We always suggest you get more. People don't know if they're registered or not sometimes. Sometimes people lie, you know. Sometimes they say they live in Brookline, but they don't. So if you're just getting them randomly, we suggest strongly that you get anywhere from 20 to 30% more than you're actually required. In terms of town meeting, it's relatively simple, but you know, we still suggest that you get 20 to 30% more than you require. And once you get those, you file it, and you should have no problems. Again, the last day to register voters, again, is 20 days prior to the election, so that would be April 15th. So if you were able to identify people who support you, that like you might have some neighbors that aren't registered, you know, and it happens. You know, this is the League of Women Voters, and I know they would like to think that everybody's registered to vote, but it's not true. I had a person today who, I'll give you for an example, I don't have to mention any names, but he was inactive for 4 years. And under federal law, I then get to delete them because chances are they're no longer there. Guess what? He was there. And when he was deleted, the reason why he was deleted, he called me up. And the reason why he called me up was because they needed proof to show the residential exemption for his condominium. Okay, so we had him fill out a census form. You know, he filed it with us. I put him in there, and I said, well, I can't add you back as a voter. You need to re-register because you were legally deleted. And he said, sure, okay. And then he called me back 20 minutes later. Please don't send it. I'll forget about it. I don't want to vote. I don't want to vote. There are people out there that do that. I'll give you one other story. It's old now. It doesn't really apply anymore. But prior to mail-in voter registration, in order to, prior to that, you had to appear in person at the town clerk's office, except for something what they called worksite registration. If somebody petitioned for the registrars to go on site, you could register. Now, we did one for the Public Housing Authority at one of their buildings. And I had a person who came in and he said, what are you doing here? Because I knew him. He goes, what are you doing here? I said, we're registering voters. And so he asked a bunch of questions. And by the time he took to decide, you know, not to register to vote, he could have been registered to vote. So there are people out there that don't want to register to vote, but they may want to register to vote if they know you and they like you. So it's important that you get a few affidavits of voter registration, identify those people that aren't registered to vote that may want to support you, and make sure that you have them fill out those forms and file them with us by 8 p.m. on April 15th. We'll be open, that's the last day for voter registration, and we're open, required by law to be open until 8 p.m. And that's 20 days prior to the election. And then what everybody's laughing about is campaign finance reporting. You know, that's another one of the requirements of our office. The reason why they're laughing is I didn't want to go into another election cycle without getting everybody on the same page with the previous election cycle. So there's a few people that are a little late in their filing reports, but we're getting there. But basically what a campaign finance report is this, is town meeting members are exempt. You can spend $1 billion of your own money or raise somebody else's money and spend it. It's not required to be filed for town meeting purposes. Town meeting offices are essentially exempt. The town-wide offices are a little bit different. You may or may not wish to organize a committee, that's up to you. But regardless of that, in a year that you run, you are required to file, and I'm exempting the selectmen for a second. In a year that you run, any town-wide office other than selectmen, you're required to file a report 8 days preceding the election, 30 days after the election, and then a year-end report at the end of 2015, if we're all here. You know? And the reason for that is because it's, you know, I mean, you're running for town-wide office, and the presumption is that you'll be raising and expending funds, and you'll be soliciting money. And that record has to be kept. That's a state law. That has to be kept, and it will be on, it will be posted on the website. As to the selectmen, they have an additional requirement. Town meeting, in its wisdom several years ago, required that they wanted more information in a more timely fashion. So they felt that the 8th day proceeding was not enough time, I suppose, to use as candidate fodder, as political fodder. So the 8th day wasn't enough, so they required them to file 15 days prior as well. So selectmen are required to file 15 days prior, then 8 days prior, then 30 days prior, then the year end, and a separate form together for the selectmen's office. So that's the requirement, and I'll be more than happy. I know that sounds a little confusing. I'll be more than happy to any questions later on to clarify that. But that's a separate requirement only for selectmen that town meeting passed. Beyond that, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's my experience, I mean, in running for offices that you know, if you go in all the way. You know, you work hard. You know, you get all the resources that you can possibly do. You utilize them. You knock on doors. You determine, you know, if there are people that you know that aren't registered, you get them registered to vote. You determine if people who want to vote for you but may be away or may be ill, if you get them to vote absentee. And then through the resources of this office, you can identify frequent voters, those people who every year go out and vote in an annual town election. And then you probably want to guess the trends, you know, because again, it's a Proposition 2.5 override questions on the ballot. You might want to add a little bit more to that based on the trends, so you might want to take a look at the November 2014 state election. But in any event, those are the resources. They're readily available. They're easily gotten, and I wish you all well.
So my name is Pooja, as Barbara said. I'm a library trustee, and I'll talk a little bit about, a lot of folks have talked a lot about different things, so I don't want to be terribly boring, so I'll try to, you know, jazz it up a bit. But you can ask questions at the end as well. Like Barbara said, I'm a library trustee, and I also want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this together. Janice, Carol, Barbara, and Sheila. This is not easy, and they do it every year, and they do a great job. And even with the snow day, thank you for bearing with us and getting us together. So when I first moved to Brookline, I decided to run for town meeting, and then I ran for library trustee, and then I decided to, with a group of other people, start a neighborhood association. So I kind of went the other way around. The first time I ran for town meeting, I lost. The first time I ran for library trustee, I lost. The first time I ran for the neighborhood association, I Won, because I founded it. They had to let me be president. So that's what you should be doing, is not running for contested things, but just finding organizations. And that's the motto. No, I'm just kidding. So when I ran for town meeting, I lost. And the great thing when I ran again was that I had already run. And same thing with library trustee. So I think, I try not to repeat what everybody else said, but if you lose, the best thing you could do is run again, because what you've built in your candidacy before is only, it's a foundation. And don't be, don't feel, oh no, maybe this shouldn't be, this is not meant to be. No, it's definitely meant to be, because you've already run once. So what the office, a lot of people know a lot about, I'm going to let the person who's a town meeting member talk about town meeting, so I don't want to give away secrets, but the library trustee, we have lots of different things. When I first started researching and decided to run, it was because I suffer from a learning disability. I'm dyslexic and have ADHD. And I would go to, and I'm an attorney as well. So when I went to law school, I'd have all these fun different ways to get access to information. Like there'd be books on tape, there'd be books on computer that would also be on tape. But in the library, I would find, in a regular public library, I wouldn't find that much access. So, fast forward a little bit, I thought, someday when I have kids, and they may have a learning disability, so it's all for selfish reasons that I decided to run. I thought, wouldn't it be fun to get on the board and, try to advocate for something like this? But little did I know I had to run for office and raise money and do all that non-fun stuff. But I'm still happy I did it. So that was one of my personal reasons for why I wanted to run. But from when I joined the board, I learned that that's not all that matters, what I personally want to do. There's actually a toolkit for what I need to do. And some of the things are hiring and supporting the librarians. So Sarah Slyman, our newest librarian that we just hired, took the job for Chuck Flaherty, who retired after, I think, 30 some odd years. I feel like he's been there forever. And we were he had some big shoes to fill. Sarah Slyman is amazing. So myself and along with 8 other folks in the town of Brookline had to find his replacement. 2 of us were library trustees and everybody else was from the community. Another thing that library trustees do is we have a fiduciary duty. We're in charge of the budgeting, and we're in charge of the investments and the finances. So we have a fairly large budget. Don't tell the town meeting members that. But a lot of it is from investments. A lot of it is we get the money from the Brookline Library Friends of the library. They're our fundraising arm. So we don't directly do a lot of fundraising, even though we could. I personally can't do fundraising because I'm a state employee. So even for my own campaign, for example, I couldn't fundraise. I had to have a committee that could do all that. And another thing that the library, Board of Library Trustees is in charge of is programming. So you might have heard of Brookline Reads. We'll pick a book, and then everybody in the town reads it. Each and every one of you read it, and then we have programming about it. And those are just some of the programs. We've had there's a whole list of programs that we've done that I'm very proud of. A lot of them tend to be, the ones that I'm personally excited about are the ones that have to do with parents and little kids, because I'm a mother of young kids. So that's what kind of drew me into the library, is I was on maternity leave and had to get the heck out of the house. I'm sure some of you know what that's like. And that's when I got introduced to the library, because there were tons of other moms like me who were trying to get the heck out of the house, and little babies, and it's just a great way to network and meet other moms and build a community. All of us, we have to go to meetings once a month. Doesn't seem like a lot, they're only 3 hours long, but we also have to be on a subcommittee, and those meetings are probably once a week, twice a week, hour or so. Like I said, when we were trying to find Chuck's replacement, that was not an hour or 2 a week, that was a very, very long time. It took much longer than a couple hours a week. So it just depends, I guess it's project-based. We're also in charge of the building and grounds. You might have heard about the Coolidge Corner Library. We're doing lots of renovations. Please go to the library, please fill out the survey. We've only had 150 people fill out that survey, and that's a dismal number because I know more than 150 people attend the, actually visit the Coolidge Library. So it's a very important part of your community, so please look at that survey whenever you can. Let's see, why did I run? I'm a local government junkie. I think it's a lot of fun and exciting. And I'm sure a lot of you do, or you wouldn't be here this late at night listening to us talk. And it's just a lot of fun. It's my social / intellectual outlet. I love government during the day too. I work for the chair of Senate Ways and Means, and that's more on a state level, but it's just more fun to get involved in your own community and actually see where each dollar goes. I find that very exciting. If there's any way I can help any of you folks, please reach out. Again, if you lose, please run again. Promise me that. And no matter what you do register to vote, because I think that's the worst thing you could do is not vote. Thank you.
And our next speaker, Josina Becker, is one of our younger members of town meeting. And you can see from many of us here that there are many older members. So we have varied ages, we have varied ethnicities, we have certainly varied political interests in town meeting. And that's one of the things that makes it lots of fun. If you're a people watcher, there's nothing better than the Brookline town meeting. I'll turn this over to Josina.
Sure. Hi, I'm Josina Becker, and I actually ran because when I started exploring town meeting in Brookline, I found that it was in fact not a microcosm of Brookline at all. And you know, I think that, like Barbara was saying earlier, if you see a problem or something that you want to do, it's a lot easier to complain about it and a lot harder to do something. But people used to think that I was a reporter. They probably still do think that I'm a reporter or a student doing a project, and I'm not. I, live here too. I don't have children. I don't own a house. I don't have a family that's a legend in Brookline. But you also can run for office, and so.
We only said his father. My father.
So kind of coming full circle, I used to. I grew up in Arlington and Lexington, Massachusetts, not in Brookline, and I was in Washington, D.C. working for Nancy Pelosi, doing political fundraising. And I moved up here for a non-political job and wanted to stay involved. And so, as I said, I kind of started poking around what was happening in local politics and didn't see a tremendous amount of diversity in the room, especially kind of age and demographic-wise, and decided to run. And so I attended this meeting a year ago and kind of went back and forth about, should I do it? And I knew once I handed in my papers to Pat, I couldn't take them back. So it took me a little while to do it. And, on one hand, my dad was like, why would you want to do that? That sounds like the most boring thing in the world. And, my friends thought that I was basically running for president, and they were very supportive. So in the end, I decided to run, and I think that it is so important and so worth doing. First, because somebody has to do it, and there is no reason why it shouldn't be you. In fact, it should be you, because somebody has to do it. And, that's kind of why I put myself out there. And the second reason is it's a really interesting personal exercise to go door to door to people who, for the most part, I had no idea who they were and they had no idea who I was, and kind of make a case why they should vote for you. And I've done it for a lot of other candidates, but to do it for yourself is really hard. And it's a really good way to kind of figure out what matters to you and, why would you put yourself out there for this? The good part about putting yourself out there is you meet a lot of people. The bad part is not all of them are supportive. Not everyone thought it was great that I was running. And even the people who thought it was great said things to me like, you'll probably lose, but it's great that you're doing it anyway. And, after a while that gets pretty condescending and pretty old, and every time someone said that, I am actually not going to lose. I'm going to win. And as it turns out, I got the second highest amount of votes, I think, for town meeting besides Tommy. So, it wasn't impossible. A little bit about town meeting is, unlike the other offices you've heard of, I think there's a much greater spectrum of how much time it will take up in your life. What I tell people, kind of the elevator pitch on town meeting, is we meet twice a year for multiple nights in a row, so it's kind of a batch of a few nights in the spring and a few nights in the fall, and you vote on articles, which are another word for like laws that the town writes, which are packaged into a warrant, which is a book of all of the laws. And so there's kind of all this terminology that you will learn throughout the process. And there are some people who make this a full-time job, and there are some people like me for whom it's absolutely not a full-time job, and I, have been more involved because I've had to educate myself about the issues, but you could certainly spend a lot of your time doing this, and it gets especially busy during the spring and the fall around the meetings. The other good thing is if you don't win, there's not that much that town meeting does besides casting votes that you can't do as someone who's not elected. So if there is an issue that you are particularly passionate about, you can go ahead and work with the town to put together an article, and the people who do that certainly spend more time around town meeting than I do without serving on it. So there's nothing particularly exclusive about what I do except for casting a vote. Another important thing to know about town meeting is, although my friends do think I'm the president of Brookline, there are actually a lot of town meeting members. So there are 5 members elected in each precinct every year. So there's a total of 15. You serve a 3-year term. And there are some precincts where I think they struggle to get 5 people on the ballot. And in my precinct, it happened to be very competitive. So, there were 7 people who were running for the 5 slots. So you are not the only one out there. It's a pretty big group, so, the time commitment on that varies. One thing I also experienced was a lot of really supportive people who wanted to help me. And so as you go out there, I would say that you will connect with a lot of people who you didn't know who want to help, and it's important to kind of find ways for other people to support you. And so when someone says, what can I do? You're able to say, oh, I have these, cards, they call them dear friend cards, would you mind sending them out and say, I'm voting for Josina because X, Y, and Z. Or I had these door knockers, or pieces of paper to hand out. And, I had some friends who didn't want to knock on doors, but they were comfortable, leaving them behind, or different ways for people to get involved and support you. So don't be afraid to ask for help, because although this is your campaign and you're the one who has to ultimately make the ask for yourself, people, I find, do want to support you and help you in that endeavor. So I found some creative ways to enlist people since I didn't have a huge network in the town. I actually worked with Brookline high school students and talked with them about my work in politics in DC, and then, made the pitch to them and said, if you want to see how politics and campaigns works, it's all local, so I'm running a campaign if you want to get involved. And rather than kind of jumping on board, they were really great, and they said, what are you going to do for the town? Why is this important to you? So they were kind of my first audience and some of my biggest supporters, and they were really helpful. So anyone who wants to go talk to them, they're very open to it. And that's kind of it. I took my campaign, having worked on really big campaigns, I wanted to go 110%. So I also did political fundraising, which is not political fundraising, which is important to know, and I didn't believe it. So I called lawyers at the state level and made sure it's definitely not. I had a website, I had a Facebook page, kind of easy ways to reach out to people, which are definitely not necessary, but I would encourage you to do it, especially to get the people who are not in this room to get involved. So kind of getting creative, targeting the people who vote and also the people who don't vote. I wouldn't say waste a lot of time on that, but they're out there and they want to get involved, so I wouldn't be afraid to talk with them and try to get their attention too. And if you have any questions or want to do this or are on the fence, I've been there too, so definitely talk with me, talk with other people who have run before, because it's time consuming, but it's not overwhelming, especially in town meeting. If you want to go like local government light, you can do that in town meeting.
Hi, I'm Carol, and I'm filling in because none of the Housing Authority members could be here this evening. And so I'm just going to give you a brief description of what the Housing Authority does. The Brookline Housing Authority owns and manages more than 1,500 units of affordable housing in town. The 5-person board of commissioners is responsible for overseeing the agency in all regards, approving all contracts and hiring an executive director. 4 of the 5 board members are elected by the voters of Brookline. One of the 4, and that's the office that's up this year, is a tenant representative from the Brookline Housing Authority, so they have to live in one of the Housing Authority buildings. And the 5th member is appointed by the governor of the Commonwealth. Now, Joanne Sullivan, who is one of the board members, sent me some comments, and so I'll read you what Joanne has to say. And it says, describe briefly the duties and responsibilities of the office. The Board of Commissioners oversees the Housing Authority and ensures that the Brookline Housing Authority meets its mission, which is to maintain, preserve, and increase the availability of safe, affordable, and decent homes for eligible families, seniors, and persons with disabilities. The Brookline Housing Authority also develops service components for its residents, advocates for sufficient resources on the local, state, and national level, and supports development that fits into the strength and strengthens our communities and neighborhoods. The board meets each month, usually at the Brookline Housing Authority office at 90 Longwood. The schedule is set in advance and publicized. The meetings are open and any resident may attend. Commissioners are responsible for reviewing board materials, which are made available in advance of each board meeting. So that's a brief description of the Housing Authority and what the members do.
Our last presenter is Tommy Vitolo, who is going to tell us how to run for office. He is absolutely superb in his information, and if you follow what he says, you will be in good shape.
My name is Tommy Vitolo. I'm a town meeting member. I'm also townwide elected as a constable, and I really like the process of the election. And I don't mean the small d democracy visionary part. I mean the getting down and dirty, how do you win a race stuff. So that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to assume you've decided what race you're going to run for, you believe in that mission, you are well versed in what the job is. Now the question is, okay, I want to win, how do I do that? That's what I'm going to try to work at. Some of the folks out there may be thinking, geez, you know, there's no way I could be as good a selectman or library trustee or town meeting members, the folks up here. That's okay, you can win anyway. And likewise, you might be thinking, I'm way better than these folks up here. That's okay, you can lose anyway, right? So winning and losing does not necessarily have a whole lot to do with your skills once elected. For better or for worse, that's the reality. And there's no one way to get yourself elected. So you need to filter, you need to figure out what I'm saying that resonates with you, throw away the stuff that doesn't, listen to other folks, right? There's no single recipe. It depends on a lot of factors. So I'll start with some general advice, and then we'll get into more of the details. Your goal is not to maximize the number of votes you receive. That's not your goal. Your goal is to maximize your chance of winning. Far better to win 5 votes to 3 than to lose 512 to 513, right? Your goal is not to maximize the number of votes you receive, but to maximize the chance you have of winning, and they're not always the same thing. And there are 2 kinds of voters. Only 2 kinds of people in this world when you're running for office. 2 kinds of people who you ever want to talk with. They're the kind who vote, and you just got to get them to like you. And then there are the people who like you, and you just got to get them to vote. If somebody doesn't vote and doesn't like you, don't spend any time with them. right? Because that's time you could be spent doing something more productive. And the way that you win, there's two ways to win a race. One is to run unopposed. That could be 5 candidates for 5 town meeting seats, or 2 for 2 in selectmen, or whatever it works out to be. It's the best way to win. But you don't always get to choose if you're running unopposed. In fact, you generally don't get to choose if you're running unopposed. So if you are running in a competitive race, the way you win is you work. You don't half it, right? You don't put in your papers and then you're sort of embarrassed that maybe if I make it look like I'm working hard and I lose, I'll feel really bad about it, so I better just keep it cool. No. You put your name in. It's on the website. When somebody Google searches your name from now to time immemorial, they'll know you ran. So it's not a secret anymore. You may as well get out there and win. You may as well get out there and work. And when you're working, you're going to be doing lots of interaction with other people. It's really important to remember to be polite. I know, right? Like we know we're supposed to do that, right? But it's difficult to remember to be polite all of the time. There's 2 situations in particular where it's easy to forget to be polite. The first is you're knocking on doors, right? And it's hard to knock on doors. And you've been at it a while, and you're tired, and you're working hard, and you're trying to connect with people. And someone's just rude to you. They're just flat out a jerk to you, to your face, right? They give you guff, they slam the door in your face, right? It's really easy at that moment to say something nasty. And if you think that they weren't going to vote for you before, but now that you said something nasty to them that they will vote for you, you're wrong, right? Your goal is to maximize your chance of winning, and being impolite to someone is really unlikely to help your case. The other group of folks who it's easy to forget to be polite to are your fellow candidates, right? So Josina and I ran against each other last year. We were both new to Precinct 6 politics. I had moved in from Precinct 1 where I had been a town meeting member. And Josina actually came to me and we talked, I think coming back from this meeting last year, maybe we ran into each other walking toward the tee. And I was perfectly happy telling Josina everything I knew about running for town meeting and town administration, including saying to Josina, people are going to say you're going to lose and you should run again next year, and tell them nonsense, you're going to win this year, right? I said that to you, I remember that. And I'm glad you won. I'm glad I won too. So you're going to run against folks, and it's going to be easy to feel in the heat of the moment, all this pressure, you're going to want to feel like you should be rude or impolite to someone you're running against. Here's the thing though, the odds are high you both win. And now this person's your colleague, and you were a jerk to them. And now you got to work with them. And it's hard to be effective when people don't like to work with you. So it's really important to remember that you want to win, you get invested in it, but you got to take a step back and remember that actually being polite is really important. And it's important to remember to be polite all the time. And I'm harping on it because it's something that I have to remind myself quite a bit. So maybe others have to remind themselves as well. You want to be strategic when you run, right? You know when's a good time to go knock on doors in an apartment building? When it's raining. That's a great time to be inside knocking on doors, right? Late at night, you can't knock on doors. Read a little bit, maybe send some emails. Use your time wisely and be thoughtful. You can't do everything, and so try to be organized and try to be thoughtful in the way you go about what you do, because you have a limited amount of time, and perhaps you're spending some money, you have a limited amount of money, so you need to be strategic. None of this ready, fire, aim stuff, right? And you need to listen. You need to listen to everyone, and then you need to filter. Brookline has no shortage of opinions. And there's a grain of truth in most of them. Sometimes it's just a grain, though. And so you really do want to listen to folks, and you really want to filter what they're saying, because not everybody's got it right. Some people do. You should be filtering some of what I'm saying, right? Some big picture thoughts. You've got to be comfortable with your campaign. So you've got to figure out the things that make sense for you but you also need to get yourself a little bit uncomfortable. It's, for most people, including me, knocking on doors is uncomfortable, at least at first. Asking people for help can be uncomfortable, but you've got to do it, right? So you need to be comfortable with your campaign, but you need to get out of your comfort zone a little bit while you're campaigning. And you do need to ask for help. You can't do everything, and even if you could, newsflash, there are folks out there who you know, who like you, who are better than you at certain things. Ask them for help with those things, right? For some people it's, hey, write me a check. I need some money to do some of this stuff. For other folks it's, I know you're really good with computers. Can you help me with a website? Can you help me with some emails? Can you help me with a database? For others it's, you have a silver tongue. Help me with my literature so I can express what I want to express in a way which is more convincing. Ask for help. There's no reason to run a campaign all by yourself. There's no reason. You're asking for help from all these voters. Ask for help from your friends and colleagues and family as well. Read the tab. If you don't read the tab, start. You don't have to read the whole thing. You read section A, and the articles that go into section B, and you read the opinion page, remembering that folks who write letters to the editor care very strongly about an opinion. They're not necessarily representative of the average or the community at large. They cared enough to write a letter to the editor, but you still want to read it and know what's getting people worked up in town. So it doesn't take long. You can certainly read the tab on the Green Line on the way to work if the Green Line shows up for you. And you do want to go to community events. And you want to go to community events with people who know the people at that event. So when I'm going to an event with the Brookline Neighborhood Association, I say, Sean, take me to that event, because Sean knows everyone there. And Sean says, this is my friend Tommy, he's hot stuff, he's great, you really want to get to know him. And it's easier for me because I don't have to just stand in the corner, timid, or maybe try to jump into a conversation. I've got somebody who's very knowledgeable, who introduces me. It's a great way to speed up that process of meeting voters, of meeting neighbors. Go with people who belong to that community and get them to introduce you. Some tactics of the actual campaign itself, some of the details. The first thing you do, even before you get signatures, the very first thing you do once you decide you want to run a race is you put together your calendar. When is election day? Say it with me. May 5th. Tuesday, May 5th. First Tuesday in May. Polls are open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Tuesday, May 5th. It's very important. What's the next most important date? The date your signatures are due. Make sure you get it right. Don't show up the next day. Hat will be there, but you won't be on the ballot. That's the law, right? There are some other important dates too, though, and you've got to sort of figure out what they are. There's a due date for the League of Women Voters to submit your 100 words if you're running for town meeting. They're serious about that due date. You don't want, the Brookline tab to have the insert. It says Barbara Scotto. These are all the great things about Barbara Scotto. And it says Pooja. These are all the great things about Pooja. And then Tommy Vitolo. It's just blank, right? That's not where you want to be. So you've got to have your dates in order. You want to go through them all and find someone who's experienced to look at your calendar, make sure you didn't miss anything. What am I missing? What's some important date? What's something I need to know about that I'm missing? Ask Pat, and he'll help you with the technical stuff at the very least. Right, so get that calendar. And then, Pat has said, 20% signatures, more than, you can get 20% more. You need 10 signatures for town meeting. Don't show up to his office with fewer than 20, right? And it's not just because you'll get some signatures that are bogus. Someone, thinks they changed the registration, but they're still registered in Hyde Park, or whatever. It's worth going out and having an excuse to talk to folks this early, right? You can't knock on somebody's door today and say, vote for me. They'll hand you a shovel. Earn my vote, right? But you can say,
shovel your way to their front
that's right. But you can say, I want to run for this office, and I need your help to get on the ballot. And when you say it like that, it's like, America, do you believe in it? Yes or no? Right? How could you say no to helping someone get on the ballot? Every once in a while, someone will. Don't be a jerk to them. But For the most part, folks are happy to sign signatures. And it's an opportunity to communicate that you're interested in running. They may ask you questions, so be ready to answer why you're interested in running. And it's also an opportunity to meet neighbors who you haven't met yet. Say, hey, I'm your neighbor. I'm knocking on your door because I need the signature, right? So you want to get signatures, you want to get extra signatures, and you don't have to wait until the day they're due. You can bring them to Pat early. In fact, I'm sure he'd appreciate that. Bring them in a couple of days early. And then if it turns out that your whole neighborhood is actually not registered, and you only have 4 valid signatures, you have time to go back and get some more. You want to get the list of registered voters in your precinct or townwide as appropriate, and the list of frequent voters, that subset. And you want to get a map. This applies more for a town meeting, although I suppose if you're running for a townwide office, you probably shouldn't be knocking on doors in Newton. The precinct boundaries aren't always obvious, and they're not always what you think they are. And gee whiz, if you're running for a town meeting in Precinct 6 and you're knocking on doors in Precinct 7 or Precinct 12, you may be getting a lot of people to like you, but they can't vote for you. So that's a terrible use of your time. Get the map, learn your map, make sure you've got the most recent map, which went into effect in 2012, I guess. Not the map from the last decade, because the lines moved a little bit. So you want to get your map, and you want to make sure you're talking to the right folks. And you want to have some of those voter registration forms Pat mentioned earlier. If you go to the clerk's office, they'll try to give you like 2 or 3, push back and say, no, I need like 8 or 10. Right? The clerk's office doesn't pay for them, right? The state gives them to you.
Just got a new batch of because we have 2 brand new parties.
See?
Yeah.
That's right. So
we're flush with affidavits. So
it's wonderful. It's wonderful. There are 2 kinds of people. Who are they? The people who vote. You got to get them to like you. Those folks are registered. But they're also the people who like you. You just got to get them to vote. They may not be registered. So who likes you, right? Well, the people in your household may like you. They may vote for you to get you out of the house. They may vote against you because they want you to stay home. I don't know. Your neighbors, the other folks with dogs. This is an opportunity to finally meet the names of the owners of those dogs when you're at the dog park. Your kids, friends, parents, right? Whoever has some connection with you, whether it's political or not, they like you, but they may not be a voter. Find out. Check the list. And if they're not on that list, you bring them this voter registration. When you don't say, here's a form, go register, you lousy American, right? You say, listen, I want to make sure, I checked the list and you weren't on it, or you don't even say that, are you registered? Why don't we make sure you fill out the form with them? And you fill it out carefully, because there's like 3 or 4 spots on the form where it's not really obvious what you should do, and people make mistakes all the time, right? They sign in the wrong spot. That happens a lot. They write down their entire social security number, and you're only supposed to write down the last 4 digits. So help them fill out the form, and then don't leave it with them. Say, Joe, I'm running a town hall tomorrow anyway. Why don't I just bring it in for you? I'll do you a favor, right? You're not really doing them a favor. You're doing yourself a favor, because if you leave it with Joe, there's like a 50-50 shot he'll bring it in, which means there's a 50-50 shot he won't. You bring it in, you know it gets there, right? So you want to bring that form in. And you know what you just did? You just registered another voter. The League of Women Voters thanks you for that, right? That's a great thing. You probably want to put together a literature piece. Different people have very different ideas on how to do this, and this is one of those places where it's got to fit your personality. Could be a trifold, could be a postcard, could be a novel. I don't know, right? People do it different ways. Figure out what works for you. Website, that's nice. It might be a little overkill for town meeting. It might not be. It depends on how competitive it is. Townwide office, it's probably become par for the course. Doesn't have to be amazing, but you just want to give people another way to find out about you. And when you get that literature, the goal is to leave it with the person, right? And sometimes you have to work hard at getting it to stick to their hands. But so you knock on a door, and I knock on Neil Gordon's door, and he's home, and I want to leave him with that literature. And what I really want is for it to end up on the refrigerator. Other voters live with Neil, and I want to make sure they see it too. But maybe Neil's not home. I leave the literature anyway. Neil, sorry I missed you. See you election day. Your pal Tommy, right? And I get it to stick to his doorknob or something. I make sure it doesn't blow away because no one likes litter, but I want to leave it for him. And maybe I'll come back and knock a second time, maybe I won't, but at least I got that touch with him. Endorsements, folks talk about in town. I think for townwide races, they're pretty relevant. For town meeting races, it's not always so important. It really depends on your precinct, and it depends on who's endorsing you, right? Organizations endorse as well. It's not just people. Brookline PACs endorses, for example. So use your search engine, find out about Brookline PACs, and figure out if your values align with theirs, and if you want to seek their endorsement. They have a deadline, so you want to put that on your calendar, right? And I guess the tab probably endorses for competitive town-wide races, so that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world either. You do want to go to events. The League of Women Voters typically has a forum. Get that on your calendar. Do we have a date for that forum yet?
Yeah, April. Sean, do you remember?
Pending.
Late April, last week of April.
Last week of April. That's typically a focus for town-wide candidates, although sometimes there's time for town meeting members to make a small pitch. And even if there isn't, you still want to get to know the folks in the room. There may be other forums as well, so read the tab, keep your ears open. What I haven't talked about at all is voter ID. Right? So we've talked about interactions with people, but what do you do with that interaction? It's one thing for me to meet a guy named Frank Caro and, oh, he seemed like he liked me, I'll bank that. That's okay, but it's far better if you make a note. Maybe you have something on paper, maybe you have a spreadsheet. Frank Caro, we talked about issues regarding seniors and how to make it easier for seniors to live in the town, and that's what, he's really into that. Make a little note about that. And maybe that helps you remember next time you see him to ask him something about it or to bring it up, or maybe it just helps you better get to know your future constituent, because you're going to win your race, and Frank Caro's going to be calling you saying, we got to do something for these seniors, so you should be prepared for that. When you do have that interaction with Frank, you want to try to feel out, maybe even by asking him, and this is hard to do, but it's really effective. Frank, you going to vote for me on Tuesday, May 5th from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.? Are you going to vote for me? I need your vote. Can I count on it? And Frank says, maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe he says yes.Maybe he says no. Right? But you want to know that, because as it gets close to the election, remember, your job is to maximize your chance of winning. If I feel like Frank's going to vote for me, or if he said he's going to vote for me and I believe him, I really want to, poke him on May 4th or May 3rd and say, Frank, don't forget, Tuesday, May 5th, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. You're in precinct 10, so you vote on Harvard Street somewhere, but I couldn't tell you where. Right? Okay, at the Kinkham Apartments, you got to tell people, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Here's where you vote. I'm going to see you there. It's going to be great. But if Frank didn't like me, am I going to remind him? No, I'm not. Sorry, League of Women Voters. I don't want Frank to vote, because he's not going to vote for me. He's going to vote for somebody else. So you don't necessarily say, don't tell him the election's Thursday instead of Tuesday, but you're not obligated to remind him to vote, and if you want to win, you're probably best off not reminding him to vote. And that's okay, right? That's how this process works. It's up to some other candidate to make sure he gets out in that case. So you want a voter ID, you want to record it, and then you want to use that information near the end of the election to try to make sure that people who support you come out and vote, because I would have voted for you as worth bupkis, right? I meant to vote for you as worth nothing. I was going to vote for you except get you nowhere, right? So you got to get them to actually vote. And if you think that you're not going to get them there on the election, get them to vote absentee. That's a process. There's paperwork. Pat can help you with the details. You can vote absentee by showing up at the town clerk and physically doing it while you're there. Once the ballots become available, like middle of April.
Hopefully.
So you want to get those votes. And again, it's always at the tip of your tongue. Tuesday, May 5th, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Fill in the blank for whatever location you vote at. And you just want to load people with that over and over and over again. Voter turnout's low, so people forget. You got to help them remember.
Can I ask a quick context question?
Sure.
In a typical town meeting race, if there is such a thing, what's the difference in the number of votes between finishing 5th and you're in and 6th and you're running again next year?
Very often, fewer than this. In town meeting races, last year, 2 people tied for 5th place, which means they both lost. That's the rule. They actually just both lost. There was no coin flip, no cutting a deck of cards. So there are ties, right? And if you tie for 3rd place in town meeting, good for you, you both won. Tie for 5th, you both lose. Folks lose by a vote or 2 or 3 all the time. Because in many precincts, 100 votes is enough to win. 120, 130, right? And so there can be a really narrow band. So yeah, make sure the people who live in your household vote. Or that'll be, you lose by 1 and your spouse didn't vote. That's a rough year for somebody. And it happens. So yeah, for townwide, the spread is a little bit bigger. But if you're so good at running for townwide office that you've got, you're going to win by 30, so you don't have to worry about this other voter. Hey, you're better at this than I am, right? It's really hard to know exactly how you're going to do. So you just keep trying to get votes 1, 2 at a time. It's slow going, but you just pick them up 1 or 2 at a time. And ideally, you can't do it for a townwide race probably, but for a precinct race, for a town meeting race, 3 months later, when the list of people who actually voted is published, you can run down that list and highlight the folks who you think voted for you, and it comes real close to your vote total. Because you went out and you found your voters 1 at a time, and they showed up and voted, and you knew who they would be. That's not a crazy thing. So that's the spiel. I'm going to be around if you have any specific questions. It's work, but it's good yucks. It's good fun. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Tommy. Are there any questions for Tommy or for any of the other people who've spoken tonight? Yes.
Yes. I'm not clear on how the advisory committees for library, school department, how do those people become involved?
There is no advisory committee for the school department.
Well, let's say library trustees has a branch that says library, so that's some advisory committee, or?
No, that just means that they are the people who are in charge of setting the policy for the library.
So, they're different, or they're the same group?
It's the same group.
Oh, it's the same group.
Yeah, and the same thing for school committee. There is an advisory committee, but that's essentially the town finance committee that Sandy Gadsby was talking about. Yeah. Yes.
For the town meeting members, how much time do you put in to read the information that they provide to you, and not only the attendance at the meetings, but the preparation for those meetings?
Some town meeting members clearly put in very little, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
So leading up to it, I would say that I've probably you kind of get the materials in iterations because they're edited up until pretty much the day. Probably for I don't know exactly what day they come out on, maybe it's like 3 or 4 weeks beforehand, the reports are printed. It's thick to get through. I would say it definitely is a few hours of reading to get through. And then what we've done in Precinct 6 is we've had meetings to discuss them because there's things in there that, like, I don't know a lot about the difference between zoning for 2 and 3 family houses. So even if I read it, there's not a lot of context. So there's definitely prep. It's not overwhelming. You're not getting 2,000 pages, but I would say it's probably about 500. And then there's a lot of meetings if you want more information about it.
But I'd like to respond to that question as a town meeting member, just to say that some town meeting members actually take their responsibilities quite seriously in seeing themselves as a representative of their precinct, and concern themselves with precinct-wide issues, and sometimes serve their constituents by being intermediaries and helping constituents make connections at town hall. So some of them actually spend significant amounts of time doing that.
And I'd like to further add that it runs the gamut. I mean, there are town meeting members that are basically the genesis of some of these warrant articles, that they've worked hard, they've initiated it, they've submitted it, gotten the signatures to get it on the warrant articles. And so it runs the full field. You have people that work essentially on an issue that will ultimately wind up as an article on the warrant, and they'll move it, and others will just sit there and just they'll be advised through the reports of the advisory committee and the board of selectmen on the articles in the warrant, and hopefully they make an informed vote. But there are other town meeting members that have been involved for months, going before various committees, the advisory committee, the board of selectmen, and advocating for that particular warrant article. So it runs the gamut.
There's another thing that you can find on the website, on Pat's website, is attendance at town meeting. If you're running in a precinct and you think that the people you're running against have not been regular attendees, that's a good piece of information. The other is now there's recorded votes on some of the most controversial issues that they vote on. So you would have ammunition to talk about what you would do if you were a town meeting member in that precinct. So those are both on Pat's website.
And if I just might add, in terms of the website, Tommy made me think of it, but I didn't point it out before. I suppose other resources is that the list of candidates that are running for office. That's on the website now. It's updated every Friday up until the filing deadline, and actually the withdrawal deadline. And then also too, there's also a precinct index, which indicates you can find an address and it'll tell you what precinct it's in. And there's also a list of the polling locations as well. So all of those are resources for anybody who's running either town-wide or precinct-wide.
And I want to jump in too. So I think all these positions are what you make them. You can definitely go and, even as a library trustee, I can just go to my monthly meeting and go to my subcommittee meeting and be very quiet. But like Frank said, some people they read page per page every sentence, and they read the advisory committee recommendation, they read the board of selectmen recommendation, and they read the tab, and then they go and they speak at caucus, like their own precinct caucus, which a lot of precincts are doing, where they get together and discuss each and every warrant article, or they just talk about the warrant article that's controversial, or or the ones that they've been contacted a lot. Because I will get letters to my personal home address saying, "Dear town meeting member, please vote for or against or no action." So when you get letters like that, you already know that this is going to be this specific article will take a lot longer than, let's say, another article.
The other thing is that the Town Meeting Members Association has a listserv, and lots of discussion goes on online, and all of the town meeting members are on that listserv. So a lot of the controversy about certain articles will surface right there, and so you are a little bit ahead if you would follow that discussion. Any other questions or comments?
I just wanted to make a comment that the League of Women Voters play a role in this, but we had co-sponsors, and that was the Neighborhood Association and the Town Meeting Members Association, the co-sponsors of this event with us. And we thank them for helping.
If there are no other questions, I'm going to turn this over to Selectman Franco for one final piece.
So it's heartening to see so many people here tonight, and hopefully all of you have been convinced that running for office is the right move for you. But some of you perhaps have decided that it's too much of a time commitment, or you want to get more versed in town issues before taking the plunge and running for town meeting or school committee or whatever office caught your fancy. There is another option besides being sort of an advocate, and that is seeking appointment to a board or commission. And the Board of Selectmen is one of its responsibilities is to appoint members of countless boards and commissions. I've sort of lost track as to how many there are. But if you're interested in a topic, there is a board and commission for you. And they range from things like the Building Commission, which is responsible for overseeing construction projects on town buildings. to the Commission for the Advancement of Women, to the Conservation Commission or the Transportation Board, 2 boards that actually have some statutory authority. So if there is any reason, any hesitation for you running for office, but you do want to be involved, check out the town website and look at the boards and commissions page and see if maybe something catches your fancy there.
And I would just like to add one thing. I said it last year, and I'd like to say it again this year. If you're considering running for townwide office or as a town meeting member in your precinct, please respond to the League of Women Voters questionnaire. There is nothing more deadly to a candidacy when that gets published and you see did not reply.
I'd like to thank all of the people who spoke here tonight, as well as the audience that has come and been interested, and we hope many of you decide to run for public office. And good luck.